Good morning. Welcome to the ZEISS Extended Data Workshop. I'm sure you're all familiar with ZEISS from the aspect of the industry that you work in. Yeah, we've been making lenses for an awful long time, roughly 126 years. We're one of the few lens manufacturers who can claim to have lenses sitting around on the moon. We've just celebrated an 80-year partnership with ARRI. Unusually for a company of our size, we plough back 10% of our turnover into research and development. So we're constantly pioneering new technologies across all the different sections of our business. So I'll just briefly touch on the history that's more relevant to what you've come to look at today. Back in 2009 at NAB, we launched some lenses called CP2s. The idea of these lenses was to make affordable cine glass, because prior to that point, cine glass was 10,000 euros-ish plus. So we brought out lenses that were significantly cheaper than that to coincide with the kind of 5D revolution of cameras getting cheaper. So they're the best-selling cinema lenses to date. We've sold upwards of 30,000 units since 2009. They cover a full frame. They have an interchangeable mount system, which was another new idea from us. So if you're running multiple cameras, or you're a production company, or you're a university, they have user-changeable IMS system on them. They have 14 iris blades, giving you beautiful, circular, nice out-of-focus qualities. A standard front diameter, 14 focal lengths. So they became almost an industry standard. They were very usable cinema lenses for a very sensible price. But as I've mentioned, they were launched in 2009. An awful lot's changed in camera technology and in the types of filming that people are doing. So we decided to bring out the CP3 lenses at NAB this year. What our aim with the CP3s was to make them smaller, to make them lighter, and to make them more consistent. Obviously, a lot of people are using gimbals and drones for filming. It's becoming more and more popular. So it made sense for us to make a lens that would work with that growing aspect of the trade. One of the other things we improved was the focusing. One of the few criticisms we ever got about CP2s was that the focusing could get a bit stiff, particularly when it was cold. Sometimes the follow focus unit would struggle to drive them. So we've completely changed the focusing system on the CP3s. It's a lot smoother and works in a much more varying degree of temperature range. We've also made them sharper. In nearly 8 years, an awful lot has been learnt by ZEISS about coatings on lenses particularly. So every coating on each of the elements has been vastly improved. So in terms of sharpness, they compare much more closely to ultra primes than the CP2s did. They're color matched throughout. They still have a nice 300-degree focus throw, so you can very nice, accurate, smooth focus pulls are possible. We kept the IMS system, because even more today than when we launched them, there are even more camera mounts available that you might need an E-mount Sony for one job and a RED for another job. And with these lenses, you can invest in the glass and not worry about that. You can just change the lenses yourself, change the mounts on the lenses yourself with absolutely no trouble at all. So that's the CP3s generally, what we've done. For the extended data subject, I'm going to pass over to some real experts to talk you through that. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandeep Reddy, and it's my colleague Christoph Kasanov from Oberkochen, and I'm the product specialist for ZEISS, and Christoph's our product manager.
Yes, so I'm product manager working in Germany, so working on the definition and development of cinema lenses. So I'm quite happy and excited to be with you today and introduce this technology to you.
So we got 10 full frame lenses with a true cinema look. One of the things that we were thinking about was building all these lenses to cover the full frame size, because most of the cameras now are talking about full frame. If you take RED, for instance, you have the VistaVision, and more recently you've also heard about the Sony Venice. And full frame is becoming more and more popular, and that's one of the reasons CP3 is focused on full frame imaging. And we got very, very good cinema ergonomics and a consistent T-stop. But cinema ergonomics was one of the topics when we had CP2s. We collected a lot of feedback from the industry as to how these lenses should be. And over the last decade or so, we've kind of evolved into different forays. We've got gimbals, we've got all kinds of new technology that we work with. There's a lot of work with shot overs, a lot of aerial photography, all of that. So that was something that we also had to consider. So compact and lightweight, and all the lenses are 95mm front diameter. And one thing that we added to our lenses was we made them smarter. So now we brought eXtended data, which we'll talk about later. And we have 10 lenses. I mean, those are the lenses that we have. And they cover whatever productions use. And there's color matching all throughout the family. If you look at the top, that's how the CP2 was in terms of T-stops. And that was something we wanted to avoid with the CP3s, so we kept it pretty constant. So the 15, 18, and the 21 are 2.9, while the rest of them are 2.1. This is actually a lot more consistent and helps productions plan and light better with a lot more consistency. And as far as mechanics are concerned, it's smaller, like the Ultra Primes, but also they are meant to have a smoother rotation in focus. And what we did maintain was we maintained a constant torque across the range as well. So you don't see differences in, or feel differences in colder temperatures or hot temperatures. So XD is interesting because every time there's a visual effects production involved, the first and foremost thing that the production does is to start shooting grid shots. All the lenses have to be profiled for, and all of that goes to the visual effects. And you're basically, the visual effects artists are having to do guesswork in terms of getting the shading and distortion rate. But it's still a manual process, and it's also a lot of guesswork. So what we did with XD was we built within those lenses a circuit board which has an encoder track that basically calculates all the shading and distortion values that VFX needs. So if I turn my focus ring, it's going to basically give me the position of the shading and distortion and outputs that value.
Yeah, it's unique to each copy of the lens. So basically, depending on a different scale, as you know, our scales are calibrated, and for each calibration, we also calibrate shading and distortion. When you make grid shots, you will do like 5, 6 distances. Here, it's really for each distance marked on the lens, you would have a characteristic. So we have plenty of, if you want to talk like this, we have plenty of matrices with different shading characteristics. So it's much more precise than what you could do with grid shots. And on top of this, you don't need to make those grid shots.
We have the top one says frame accurate data. So what is really good with the XD lenses is the data is output as you're recording. So even if I go through a focus rack, that data is ramped, all that data is recorded. And the REDs as well as the CP3s are a very good marriage that way, because the REDs can already take in the /I data. The good thing with RED is they got a very fast development team that absorbs all new technology, and it's been very, very comfortable working with RED. Right, so XD, more about XD. So it's basically, XD means extended data. It's Cook-eye data, /eye data, plus ZEISS lens characteristics, shading data and distortion data. And you've got lens control systems that already work with XD, such as the WCU4, for example, and on-set displays such as Transvideo and PCM Max software, which we'll show you. All DSM-C2, Sony F55s, F5s, all ARRI cameras, and BMD SR Mini. WCU4, it's got the C-motion system as well as the Preston. So which system allows you to record the metadata? It's currently the ambient box. So the ambient can do up to 60 frames per second syncing. So the lens is actually faster, but the recording mechanism is the ambient. So right now we are recording all the data from the lens through the ambient Lockheed box. So you're externally outputting the data through a LEMO spigot. Currently, we work with Pomfret, Silverstack, and LiveGrade, and we work with DaVinci Resolve, and we can control shading and distortion, we can correct, and we can also add shading and distortion to the images. So how does it work? So that's basically what the /eye data is. So you've got all your manufacturer number, firmware version, focal length, all of that, but pretty much you will see in the raw metadata already. And on top of that, we've opened two more fields, which is distortion data and shading data. The good thing about XD is the DOP has very, very good control over what he or she is doing. You can look at the data live. You can use LiveGrade to be able to output an image straight from the camera, and you can start looking at the distortion and shading data, and you can also output that data and use that data in post. What's really, really good is because you have the /eye data and you've got the lenses with all the pre-calibrated readings. Let's say if you take a WCU4, you already have the focus marks in there. You don't have to recalibrate or any of that. You already have that on the WCU4, on the hand unit. All you do is change your lens and that's it, stick your motors back. Also, the master Lockheed box is going to create clip-based data. So the master Lockheed box, for example, will communicate with the camera and the lens, and the take or the shot number will be the same. The only thing is the extension will change, and it will be frame accurate, and it will have everything metadata locked. So you can bring it in through Silverstack and marry the metadata to the clip. So just to summarize, you can have a live grade scenario straight from the camera on set. You can take in all that metadata, modify that metadata look-wise, shading and distortion. You could save that on a drive, or you can go straight into Silverstack and start working in post. So there are various possibilities of how you can work with the data itself. Basically benefits productions that are in need of a very, very quick turnaround time, and also for small production companies that have a very, very high focus on VFX. Thank you very much.
Thank thanks ever so much for coming. Just going to do a very brief introduction about who Ember is and what we do. We're a production company, a sort of content creation agency that's involved in a really vast array of projects, from natural history to commercials to drama. We kind of champion using quite small teams, very highly effective teams, owning all the equipment in-house and looking to work with these partners to really maximise the equipment and the effectiveness across lots of genres. Yes, we work on very large, big projects, but we also work on that very quick turnaround, owning all of the gear, understanding, you know, the VFX, the post work, and just really trying to make the most of how these lenses can actually help you guys. One of our biggest specialisms is really high frame rate work. First off in 35mm, then obviously early digital, and now obviously Phantoms 2K, 4K. So back then, in kind of the earlier days with certainly the first digital high-speed cameras, we were always after very fast lenses, and you know, master primes for higher end projects were the kind of go-to. We just had to have the fastest lenses to give us enough light to capture the images. The technology, thankfully, has moved on quite a lot with sensitivity, but what happened quite a few years ago with the kind of Vimeo culture, or the web culture that we're talking about, was the CP2s that Luke has talked about, and the 5D and Red 1. And you know, that kind of changed the landscape a little bit, certainly for smaller companies like ours that were, you know, didn't want to necessarily be beholden to rental houses. You know, it was, well, actually, we need to have this equipment, we need to make the most of it so that we can actually turn projects around and also be more creative. So back a long time ago, we bought Red 1 when it first came out. So we took the plunge, we kind of invested, we didn't know what we were buying. We saw, I think it was like a silver box at a show, and was like, okay, this looks pretty good, let's go for it. And if it does half of what it said it could do you know what, it's going to be awesome. And so basically since then, our company has been post-producing RAW 4K for nearly a decade. So, you know, it wasn't just, you know, we didn't want to be beholden to post houses, although of course we still work with them now. It's a question of how can we take this camera technology, how can we take post, and how can we make it work. We are shot over operators, so we're doing a lot of helicopter gimbal work, we're doing stuff for the aerials for Disney movies, and just being able to put that camera with something like a 50 to 1000 in a shot over and have it work and be able to fly aerials that are just amazing at 8K, it's just insane. And it's kind of to see where that journey's come in that time kind of just blows my mind, really. The form factor is massive, and you know, gimbal, crane work, handheld, whatever it is you're doing, it just opens you up to so many options. Because obviously the red sensor is large, the pairing with ZEISS is that they give you so much flexibility, being able to work with either 8K now or VistaVision or whatever you've got in your hands. So back to ZEISS, we were asked by the guys at ZEISS to have a look at these CP3s, and we're like, okay, well, what's the CP3s? These sound interesting. One of the things they said was they were very lightweight, or you know, a lot more lighter than the CP2s. So we have a drone department as part of our company, and we thought, okay, well, let's put it on the heavy lift, and this is what we made in a day.
Showing people something that they may have missed. The moment that is there that second and gone another. It's done from the heart. Being outdoors, this is what makes me sing and makes me want to get up every morning. Being amongst nature, no matter what the weather throws at me, it's good for my soul. Being out in the open, the sound, the feeling, the birds, the wildlife, the running of the rivers. It does give me an incredible feeling of self-fulfillment. Life is just rushing around us all the time, but I've found that there is another world out there, outside of the four walls that you're stuck in.
Well, that was good, thank you. So when we're doing, testing of lenses, although it's great to shoot charts, we're always kind of like, well, let's get our hands on it and let's put it through its paces. So, we're always trying to shoot everything wide open. We're looking at flare, we're looking at high contrast images, we're looking at, well, how does this thing actually behave? And so, what was I experience using the lenses and how did they perform? Well, quite frankly, they were a lot better than I thought they were going to be, if I'm honest. I was really surprised, having used to using ultra primes a lot. I thought they were incredibly close to them, which is what I think these guys have echoed as well. Very lightweight, very sharp. They handled flare incredibly well. Great in very high contrast scenes, and we were all, I think, and our guys that were on the shoot, all were very pleasantly surprised with the results. And actually, we're not just saying that. It was like, yeah, these are really nice lenses. So there's some other benefits with them as well. I think it's right in saying there's a definite increased resolution from the CP2s. New design, smooth focusing ring. This will basically be going over a few things that some of the guys have said already. The painted inside, which definitely helps with the flare aspects. I think the weight across the board is fantastic. So if you're doing, you've got a really long crane arm or you've got gimbal or something, and you want to switch lenses out really quickly, it's not a massive rebalance job. It's more, really important when you're doing the drone work, especially with the heavy lift, being able to go from putting a 50 on to putting a wider lens on and not really having to do anything. And that's actually quite a big deal, actually. And one thing for us with the drones that we noticed, a definite difference in flight time. So if you're in the air, when the heavy lift drone, if you're lucky if you get 10 minutes depending on wind, and so, to even claw back a couple of minutes because of the weight, that's actually a massive deal, because by the time you're hovering, you've had a look, you've tested the wind and you've flown out, you're already having to think about coming back. Obviously that's changed a lot now with a lot of the DJI products or something like that, but if you're working on a commercial or something and you need to ascertain those aesthetics through the same cameras and you don't want to use a different camera, it's kind of the only option you have. So you really have to plan your shoots really effectively, and minutes matter, and the lightweight of the lens really made a difference. Same diameter across the range, again for matte boxes and things, it just speeds up the whole production process. So CP2s, for me, although we use them for lots of sort of middle range work, we would never tended to choose them for really like more of our higher end work, if I'm completely honest. We would always push for a master or an ultra prime. But what I would say with the CP3s is that I think they definitely come into that world where if you're a company or an owner operator or something that needs to want to acquire lenses, and you think that actually I'm going to own a set rather than renting them, I think they're a really safe bet, because I think what they give you is they give you the opportunity to work across the board. So it's not just your online Vimeo content or whatever it is you're going to make. If you're next week you're doing a commercial and the next week you're doing a feature, the point is I think personally they would definitely service you across the board. I would say that I'm actually a massive fan of the CP2 Super Speeds, that said. I don't know if anyone of you guys have used those. So they're a lot faster lenses. Again, T-stop's much consistent. I'm not going to talk too much about that because the other guys have spoken about that. But that does, again, make a massive difference, especially if you're pre-lighting a scene or you're, it's just basically speeding up the process across the board so that you don't have to rebalance your gimbals, you don't have to relight a scene, you don't have to move lamps, you can just basically change a lens and create a different look. So XD. I'm going to gloss over this again because of the Cook Eye technology, but again, simple things you get: focus iris, hyperfocal distance, depth of field, and the serial numbers of the lenses, so you can know like which lens was used and where. The focus pulling thing I think is really quite amazing, actually. The fact is that you can, as long as you've shimmed the lens correctly, you can actually put your lens on and already have ZEISS accurate data, and I think that's the key thing to say. Luke talked about accuracy and precise measurements. That's what they do so well, and so if the data is that precise, then you're hitting your focus marks. So we wanted to test something, so we were going to get our hands on these XD lenses, and we're like, we need to put them to the test. I'll show you a BTS and then we'll show you where we're at with the project. So the halo jump is from Godzilla, so it's high altitude, low opening, I think that's right. And basically as a team, we've always liked that scene within that film, and we were like, well, wouldn't that be cool if we just recreated that and made that? It's like, yeah, and then this opportunity with ZEISS came up to test these lenses, and because obviously it's got a lot of blue screen work in it, we thought, oh, this would be perfect. So here's a BTS of what we did.
Hungry arms, give me all the love I need. I think that the time is now. I think that the time is now. So
it's basically just a little bit of fun. We wanted to take a lot of the lens data and work out, okay, focus, distance, etc. We used obviously the shading and distortion, but also with the Vive, we also would know where is the camera in 3D space, so we knew where it was, and actually taking all of that data into account and being able to walk and doing basically handheld blue screen, but not just like fixed handheld, like to take to simulate the camera movement with the character who was going to be flying through the air. That was the thing that we were so adamant we wanted to really put to the test and not just shoot it static and then in post make them fly down. It was like, let's have the physics or the feeling of the camera passing and take all of that data and then put it into the final thing. And what we also did is we actually sampled the actual film and we motion tracked it and reapplied the tracking from the actual film to the shots. When we were in the plane, there's a lot of like really like strong red lights that were used, and there's a color state change in camera. In the film, they actually did it with a cut, but we wanted to do it in camera with like moving lights and boards and things. And one thing we really noticed was the color matching across the lenses was really quite remarkable. You know, we didn't have to feel like, oh, we've changed lenses, let's enhance the red more because it's off. It was quite very close. And the lightness of the lenses, again, for the quick turnaround was very good. So yeah, the Vive is what I was going to talk about. So, you know, having the data and then also knowing where the camera was in 3D space was amazing, because then we could see the plotting. We knew how far it was, not just from a lens point of view, but physically. So we can take all of that data into post and know, you know, how this CG scene is going to come together, which in the turnaround that we were trying to do, we were trying to get it finished for today, and unfortunately it's a work in progress. But it's definitely, without a doubt, speeded up the post process. We did the live distortion and shading, which again on the blue screen really helped, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is a work in progress. So the VFX in this is very early. So this is like whip one, you know, very basic effects, but you'll see what we're playing with. So what we wanted to do is try and make it. It's basically a frame by frame for the scene from the film. So it's a bit, you know, it's a bit of fun, but it was a really great test for certainly from XD point of view, because you know the freedom of being able to do some of those blue screen shots and not have to worry about tracking marks, and anyone who's working in VFX is just fantastic. And taking that data is only going to speed up projects. I know there's been a lot of talk about what shading is, and I thought, well, actually, not everyone might know what it is. I thought just really basic level. As you film with very large sensors and your lens aperture is wider open, essentially. It's a physics thing with the light, but ultimately you do get edging. And if you ever film on a clear white cyclorama or anything, you definitely see it. And having the ability in these lenses to basically just go with a push of a button, pretty much go dink, it's gone. That's kind of very interesting, especially if you're doing blue screen, green screen work. And lens distortion, it's pretty explanatory what it is. But you know, being able to remove it to take a wide lens, make it perhaps slightly more rectilinear is really interesting. You know, but also on a spin side of that is actually use it creatively. for those middleweight projects that, you want a set of lenses that you want it to work across a serious myriad of different projects. It's kind of like the potential is pretty cool. So that's basically where I finished. It's a great partner. I think I was really impressed with the optical quality of them, simply, and being able to have them as part of your arsenal is amazing. And I think it opens up so many creative opportunities if you play with it. Thanks very much.